You might recall how back in February I talked about how Vivendi were trying to seize control of Ubisoft by aggressively buying shares of the company, which of course the CEO Yves Guillemot called very much unsolicited and unwelcome. And they very much seem to be sort of rallying their forces to fight back against this potential takeover that they obviously didn't really want. Now there's a bit of an update to things. That the Ubisoft thing is still an ongoing process, but as of today, Vivendi's strategy has led it to acquire a majority ownership of Gameloft, which is a mobile publisher founded by the Guillemot brothers. Now basically what happened is Vivendi purchased 30% of Gameloft and tried to tempt shareholders to part with their stock by offering 50% over market value for their shares, and it has since paid off, and Vivendi is now in charge of Gameloft, who have published things such as Asphalt and Modern Combat. Now Vivendi said in a letter to Gameloft employees, quote, "You work for a company that is already one of the most renowned and creative in the mobile game segment worldwide. We are convinced that Gameloft, with Vivendi's backing, can be more ambitious in its growth plans. In a rapidly evolving market, your company, which needs industrial and financial backing to develop, will be able to count on our full support and commitment. The joining of Vivendi and Gameloft offers opportunities for cooperation in many areas: the co-creation of content, the development of new franchises, the building of wider communities and audiences, and the pooling of our distribution networks, among other examples." And now, as a result of this rather hostile takeover of Gameloft by Vivendi, and of course the perhaps rather worrying implications that might have for the future of Ubisoft, the Gameloft CEO Michael Guillemot will be resigning from his position at the developer, according to a Bloomberg report. And he is now expected to dedicate his efforts to protecting Ubisoft from a Vivendi takeover. Now, thanks to the fact that Vivendi now owns a significant stake in Gameloft, they will of course be appointing members to the board of directors over at Gameloft later this month. And if Michael Guillemot steps down, then obviously that leaves an open chair and means he is free to regroup up with his brother Yves Guillemot so that they can work together to ensure the future of Ubisoft. Now, as I said at the start of this video, when I last discussed this, I described how Yves Guillemot called their sort of hostile takeover plans for Gameloft and Ubisoft unsolicited and unwelcome. And despite these comments, I have a bit of a statement from the analyst Christine Arrington of IHS Technology, who said that apparently, in her opinion, a Vivendi takeover would be good for Ubisoft, despite the fact that the founders themselves don't even want it. And she said, quote, "Depending on the structure of the deal, it could actually be good for Ubisoft despite it evidently being against the founders' wishes. We are going into a very competitive part of the console cycle, and despite Ubisoft's efforts to expand like Activision and EA have, the company is still heavily dependent on hits. It doesn't have an Assassin's Creed iteration this year, and it isn't in a position to acquire market share like Activision's King purchase. So if a deal could be structured where Ubisoft sees an influx of capital to invest in its diversification strategy, and Vivendi takes her hands-off approach, it might not be a bad thing for the company, even if its founders, if they can come to a mutual agreement." Now obviously, as we know, Vivendi used to own Blizzard, and they were the majority shareholder before Blizzard bought out Vivendi's shares to regain its independence once more. And of course, the fact that they wanted to buy themselves out kind of doesn't really shine well on Vivendi, but we obviously don't really know exactly what happened behind closed doors. You know, in the 10 years that Vivendi owned Blizzard, we had StarCraft, Diablo 2, Warcraft 3, and all sorts of other things. So it could be that they are indeed hands-off, or it could be that they're not. And they are perhaps one of the reasons that Activision is the beast that it has become today. Obviously, Blizzard is a separate entity in most gamers' eyes and a practical sense as well. But it is still an Activision company, and even though Blizzard are a much better company than Activision, you might argue that perhaps Vivendi's influence is why we have Activision as they are today, or perhaps not. We just don't know, but this is obviously not wanted by the owners themselves, which in itself is a bad thing, that Vivendi are like, "No, we want your company," and the owners are like, "We don't want you to have it," and they're still trying to do it anyway, because reasons. It's possible it might be a good thing. I'm not a financial person, I'm not an economist, I'm not going to even try to fathom that sort of thing, because, again, I'm not an economist or a financial expert. But it just seems like if it's against the wishes of the owners, then it just kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth that they're kind of like sort of elbowing their way through the crowd onto the stage, taking the mic from the lead singer and doing covers of Rainbow instead of whatever it is that people have come to see. Weird analogy, I know, but, you know, it works, kind of. So, I guess we'll have to see. It is entirely possible that they won't take over Ubisoft. It is entirely possible that they will, and it won't be such a bad thing after all. It is true that Ubisoft do not have Assassin's Creed this year, and Assassin's Creed, while Syndicate was a really good game, it was kind of hobbling along before Syndicate came along, and they had to really earn back a lot of trust after the thing that was Unity. So, perhaps Ubisoft could actually do with a bit of sort of a kick up the arse, I guess, or perhaps we'll see them take a turn for the worse under Vivendi. We just don't know. So it's iffy goings on now. And they seem to really want Ubisoft to have gone to the point to get Gameloft, which obviously is still an interesting company for them, but that's not really the company they seem to want. So it's going to be drama-filled and interesting is my prediction, but of course we'll have to see. Time will tell, my friends. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.